Okay, so we're now recording real quick here. There's been some really good questions so far, really just mostly about the amount of vocabulary that we see in the statistics unit. There is a lot to kind of keep separated versus talking about sample means and sample proportions and standard deviations and random selection versus random assignment. And Shane just had a good question about looking at one-bar stats on the calculator and which value should you use for standard deviation. And it is, I guess, a little bit case dependent. If we're looking at a whole population and we know that we have the data for the whole population, then you could use sigma, that lowercase sigma. If it's just a specific sample that you're typing in data for, you really should use S sub x. And while we're talking about that, I'm going to switch myself over to my camera here, because number 10 on the homework that I know some of you have already submitted. Number 10, let me see if I could just do something quick here. Number 10 requires you to type in some data, and you have some sample proportions versus the frequency that they occur with. And something that we really haven't done a lot with is doing one-bar stats when there's a given frequency. So just as a quick note, when you go to stat, see if I can turn on the light here. When you go to edit, you're going to wind up typing the proportions into list one, and it kind of instructs you to do this anyway. So I won't do all of them, but you would type in the proportions into list one. You would, in list two, type in the frequency of which those proportions occur. So those are just the first couple there. But then when you go to stat and then over to calculate for one-bar stats, you just have to make sure that you're going to do L1 for your list. And you haven't had to do this yet, but you're going to have to type in that your frequency list is L2. So you would go to second 2, and you'll see L2 pop up there. If you go down to calculate, that's not the information for number 10, but oh no, Michaela said I didn't know how to do that, so I typed in all 100. I'm so sorry, Michaela, because yeah, I have not modeled that yet for you. So that probably was not your favorite thing to do, is type in, right? Because the other option is to type in 0.62 14 times. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry you had to do that. So yeah, you can type in a frequency list there. In the old operating system, if you have an old operating system, if you do one-bar stats on the home screen, you just have to do L1, L2. So the newer operating system kind of prompts you for that frequency list. If you have an older operating system and do L1, L2, that will give you the frequency list. It will know to go to L2 for that. I don't know if it really needs parentheses there, to be honest. I don't remember if you need those, but you might want to play around with that. So sorry, Michaela, but hey, time well spent. I agree with you there. What else are we doing in quarantine anyway, guys? I mean, why not, type 100 numbers into the calculator? So I like it. The next part of our stats unit, unit 19, is a lot more data entry heavy. So we are going to be typing stuff into lists again, probably not 100 times, but we're going to be looking at typing in stuff into list one and list two. Oh, Shane, I don't know if I knew that because I've never used it, but Shane's saying that you can type up to 999 values in these lists. My goodness. For those of you taking AP stats, there's a lot of computer software programs out there that can handle a lot more than our calculator can. The calculator is definitely sufficient enough for us to get through what we do with stats in our class. But when you're dealing with upper level statistics, there's some computer programs that you might be using in an AP stats class. So yeah, but like I was saying, unit 19, we're going to be using list one and list two, but list two is not going to be a frequency list anymore. List two is going to be a completely different set of values. And we're going to see if the two variables that we have in list one and list two are related in any sort of way, and actually what function might relate them. So we're going to do something called regression, which I think you do a little bit of regression in stats, maybe in algebra 1, but we're going to extend that a lot because now we know so many more functions. Okay. What else can I help you with as we're hanging out here at 9 a.m.? Anything that we have some last minute questions about? I like that you guys are coming even if you don't have questions, because you never know if somebody else is going to ask a question that you might have wanted the answer to. And what I'll say is I'll probably host another one next week, right after you've gone through the review sheet, just so you can check in quick to see if you have any review questions. But just like this session right now, if you don't have any review questions for me, but you just want to come to pop in to see if anyone else has questions that you didn't think about, that might not be a bad idea. And plus, it's good, like I said, I don't see any of your faces, but it's good to see that you're here and you're on mute. And I really wish I could send you a copy of what my daughter's kindergarten Google Meet sessions look like, because it is wild, guys. They are just all talking at once. I'm sure they can't hear anything. It's chaos. They're running in and out of the screen, and it's actually pretty comical to watch, but maybe that's just me. So, all right. If there's no other math questions, I'm going to hit stop record, and we could always just chat for a little bit afterwards. But anything else?
Is there, I was just wondering, I don't know if we even need to know, but is there a reason behind, how there's a formula to find the sample distribution of the sample mean? I think it's like the standard deviation divided by the square root of n.
Yes. Is there a reason why that's the formula?
Is there like a reason behind that, or is it just kind of like?
Yeah, so Greg, that is a fantastic question. It's the same thing as like the standard deviation for the sample proportions, where we take the square root of p times 1 minus p over n. I wish I had a good explanation for you as to why we use those formulas, and I would guess in an upper level stats book they can give a little bit more context for that. But in our course, we just accept those formulas for what they are and kind of roll with it. So it's a good question, because I'm somebody who, when I give you a formula to use, I want to give you some context for it, but I don't have that for you at this point. So sorry, Greg, because that is a great question. Because every other formula we use, it's kind of like, well, here's how you can derive it, and here's why we need it. But for those, we're just kind of accepting them for what they are at this point, and I'll keep you in suspense, and I'll say AP Stats could take care of that question. Ella has a good question, and I'm glad we're still recording, because there might be others who want this info. Ella, your question was, do we have a final? Is that what it said? And the answer to that is not really in the traditional sense. So there's not going to be an exam that you guys will take that gets graded as a final exam. Certainly we're not taking a Regents exam this year. So I know you guys are well aware of that. What most likely will happen is that the last assignment that I give you will be something that's cumulative. So it's going to be something that I want you to complete. You can use all your notes. You can, maybe we'll have like one final Google Meet where you can check in with me about some questions. And the purpose for that are like, here are some of the key skills that you're going to want to be really good at to have success in pre-calc next year. So just as kind of a quick reminder of, a lot of it I think will cover things that we were in class to do together. But some of the trig skills that we didn't, that we saw in distance learning, some of the stuff, like I was saying, from the beginning of the year when we were in our traditional school setting, I just want to make sure that you guys feel like you're prepared for pre-calc next year. And without doing any kind of formal Regents exam review, I want to do just one more cumulative assignment. So once we're done with stats, we will most likely do one more thing like that. But it won't be necessarily something that counts for any more than just like a normal quiz or test grade. But it will be a mix of a little bit of everything. Does that kind of make sense, Ella? Okay, perfect. Excellent. These are all good questions. The crazy thing is, guys, is, with Memorial Day weekend here, so we traditionally, we won't have school Monday, because Monday is Memorial Day. So we have a 4-day week next week. And then after that, I think we will only have a couple weeks left. I know that some information regarding like when our official last day is coming to us very soon. I'm expecting it to come out this week if we haven't already heard or determined that info yet. But I know Mr. Clark will be getting that information to us, so that this way we can start making some plans for like what the rest of our year will look like. And this is not the way that we talked about this before. It's certainly not the way that any of us would have wanted to end. I really do miss being with you guys at the beginning and end of my day, to my first and ninth period students here. But I hope that when all is said and done, we'll really be able to take away some positives from this. And I really just hope that next year we don't have anything that stops us too much from being able to attend school, and that we'll be able to get back to some sense of normalcy and see each other again. So, all right. Any other mathy things I can answer for you?
What are the big differences between like observational and experimental studies and stuff?
So that's a good question. So Shane says, what's the difference between observational studies and then experiments? So the biggest difference that you're going to want to look into is that in an experiment, there has to be some sort of treatment that's imposed. So in observational studies and experiments, you're going to see some randomization for sure. You're going to see potentially some random selection. So in an observational study, you might randomly select participants, to sort of gather some data about, but you're not imposing a treatment of any sort to see if there's that cause and effect relationship. In an experimental study, you're going to see that the people who are having the treatment imposed upon them, they're going to be randomly assigned to specific groups. And when you randomly assign, then you have a better chance of getting that cause and effect relationship. But in those observational studies, where even though where you'll still have some random selection there, if you have random selection in an observational study, you can then generalize those results of the study to you can generalize them to the population. So hopefully that helps with some of the info about observational versus experiments. But as soon as you see that you're separating the group at all, and you have that control group, and then you have the group that you're experimenting on or that you're imposing that treatment, you know that it's some sort of experiment at that point. So. It's a very good question, because that actually comes up, I feel like, kind of commonly, trying to differentiate between the two. And then once you know what type of study it is, then you can answer some follow-up questions about, can you generalize to the population based on what we have? Can we conclude cause and effect? Those are important things that we want to be able to do. And the randomization piece is pretty big, guys, because without the randomization, you might have some bias that kind of makes its way into your results, and we want to try and avoid that. So there's questions that I've seen where they want you to design your own experiment. Okay, so if you were ever to design your own experiment that meets certain criteria, you definitely want to make sure you have the word random in there. You want participants to be randomly selected, and then within that, randomly assigned to the two groups. That would be the best case scenario for reducing bias. Anything else? Okay. If you have something else, I'll hit stop record for now. Let's do that.